Time today to talk about industry trends I'm seeing in AI and in the industries that AI impacts, obviously, especially from a lens of the recession and the subsequent economic recovery that is likely to play out throughout the rest of 2020 and into 2021 most likely. So looking at AI and the industry's AI impacts from this lens, I first just looked at how do companies respond to recessions. There are a lot of themes and trends from the 2007-2008 financial crisis and subsequent recession that happened there that will likely occur again. And what they found was most effective for growing revenues and growing profits was companies that had what they called a progressive response, basically focusing on operational efficiency. So operational efficiency, unlike, the first bucket, reduce expenditures, is not necessarily laying off human employees, but just making processes more efficient. In general, business functions with the most kind of unrealized AI value. So this is cutting across every industry, looking at a business function within a company, right? So the sales department, the manufacturing department. These are the four business functions with the most unrealized value, according to McKinsey: sales, marketing, manufacturing, and logistics. I like to think about the 5 business values of AI in this framework. There's kind of one bucket of business values, which is to grow revenues, and mainly that's done by increasing personalization or creating new products. And then there's a second bucket, which is reduce costs, which is improve existing processes, fully automate tasks, or reduce future uncertainty with forecasting and time series predictions and those. To imply that I highlighted these 4 areas, create new products, improve existing processes, automate tasks, and reduce uncertainty as the core focus where companies are likely to increase investment actually in AI and relative, data analysis, data initiatives, data architecture, everything that surrounds the infrastructure of AI and leveraging that and scaling that in a company. So that's really what I mean by create new products. It's enabling humans as well as kind of creating new products from scratch. Category 4 is fully automating tasks. So this could be everything from document processing to responding to customer, inquiries, et cetera, where the human is fully automated out of at least a standalone task, if not the entire responsibility. A simple example is a chatbot automating simple responses until a fail point at which it kicks over to a human rep so that some % of conversations are fully automated. And finally, reduce future uncertainty. Sales forecasting, demand forecasting, merchandising planning, all these kinds of forecasting elements I expect to be a strong element of this as companies look to control their costs and kind of make targeted bets and investment. That also plays a strong role. Let's look a little bit deeper, and there are some realities of modern AI now. Yeah, as you guys have probably know, AI is not the science fiction promise of artificial general intelligence yet, right? It's still narrow AI. The interesting thing, though, the most relevant piece of this is why companies are struggling so much with scaling up AI. It's not due to the technology, actually. It's mainly due to non-technology related limitations. Nearly 3/4, 73% of companies say that adoption continues to be an ongoing challenge. Only about a quarter report actually having a data-based or data-driven structure, and 90% cite people and process as the biggest barriers. So when we combine that picture with the picture of what is a likely response to the recession and the recovery, I've identified a couple key trends that I think are very likely to play out in 2020, or if not exactly 2020, then the near future. The first is that data, not modeling, is the main bottleneck. Mainly the problem is around controlling the data that goes into the model and then controlling the outputs from the model and what happens there. So that's kind of the first key theme. The second is that this first wave of corporate innovation has at best yielded mixed results. Projects, as we saw, are mainly stuck in proof of concept purgatory, as I like to put it. So finally, social responsibility is becoming more and more in the public view, whether it's GDPR and how that affects machine learning and AI applications, or just growing backlash. There's been some high-profile cases. So given these trends, this is what I see as the kind of almost inevitable or the likely outcome, is that companies are going to have to shift to more of a focus on not replacing humans with AI, but combining human intelligence with machine intelligence. Adoption, I think, will most likely see an upturn only when we see transparent AI. That moves to enabling more human to AI collaboration. I think that's a key part of changing processes because, as I said, you can slap an algorithm on almost anything. It doesn't mean that that is a seamlessly integrated piece of a larger business. We go back to the 5 business values of AI. I actually think that given all this, automate tasks, while it seemed like it would be something companies will invest in, I actually am not convinced that that's going to be a big area of investment this recovery period due to the specific fact of all these factors of resistance to replacing humans and an emphasis on humans working with AI rather than AI taking over their role. So I think mainly these 3 areas, and especially solutions that focus on collaborative efforts, are going to take understanding the practical limitations of both your data and your data talent, then managing people's emotions. People have emotions that range from fear of, oh my God, AI is going to replace me and take my job, to total, dismissal or ignorance. Then allowing for experimentation, because again, machine learning and AI is an iterative process. It's not perfect out of the gate. And never forgetting user experience is key. A lot of companies have focused in this first wave on accuracy. And then finally, augment rather than automate, touched on that already. And invest in your people. So to wrap up, and happy to chat and have some questions, but I don't want to take up more time than I'm slotted. So key takeaways for the 2020 recovery. For companies, it's going to be putting humans at the center of any AI initiatives or transformations, investing in making processes more efficient and more effective, and also key, given the limitations and the difficulties that companies have had so far, it's going to be minimizing any kind of integration or deployment requirements. For individuals, there's 3 key takeaways, which is don't forsake the soft skills, communication, empathy, and especially strategic thinking about. And so it's really helpful when you focus on a specific industry and can say and speak in their terms and not talk about forecasting demand, but forecasting whatever it is that's relevant to them. Those are the key kind of themes and takeaways I see for the recovery and the recession as well. Happy to chat and hopefully field any questions.
More for you, let's say you had to pick one industry to focus on, what would you pick?
So I think if you're talking about in general, I would pick whichever one interests me the most. If you're talking in the general kind of sense of what should anyone pick. For me personally, I see e-commerce as a continually, increasingly interesting segment because there's more and more kind of independent e-commerce, small kind of e-commerce shops and companies.
Model, which you need to understand that.
Right.
Even if your model is 90% accurate, it's 90% of the times it's accurate, not 90% accurate kind of a thing. So there will be chances that you will still have false positives there.
Right.
You kind of manage those kind of expectations and challenges is something which I would love to learn. And, you can answer a small here, but in our catch-up meeting, I'd love to learn a little more about that.
I think it goes to a lot of it is setting expectations, to be honest, and stakeholder, management and helping people understand what these terms like accuracy and everything means, and what is machine learning actually doing, right? It's not like magically making a decision, and it's not perfect. It's based on the evidence. It's following this given process in order to minimize this specific objective you ask it to minimize, right? Like minimize the amount you're wrong in predicting, or minimize the percentage of the time you're wrong in classifying. So giving people a little bit of sense of, quote unquote, like how the algorithm thinks and what is its objective goes a long way in that. Also educating them about what these topics, what these concepts are, like loss and the tools and people they're using right now, they know they're flawed. They know they're also imperfect. So really it's about showing them, okay, your current process is right 90% of the time, and the algorithm will be right 95% of the time. And when the algorithm is wrong, it has the exact same effect, the exact same downside as when a human being is wrong.
Actually, I guess I'll ask one more. I think
Sure.
There's three levels of AI. One is, as you mentioned, automating tasks, and then there is decision support, and then there is decision-making AI, where it's autonomously just making decisions. If you were to give it a time span, when do you think we would get to a point when we would get to a decision-making model where the AI is just making decisions autonomously, or even just ruling governments and, things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, very exciting, but also very risky. I think in some ways you can almost think of it as companies they tried to jump to step 3 of automating decisions, too early, AI. So I think it's going to be 5 years, maybe more, before we truly advance to widespread step 3 of, decision-making type of implementations.
One of my colleagues has a question for you on that. He asks, how do you suggest AI help make the sales process personalized and streamlined?
Yeah, I mean, so sales and marketing are definitely one of the business functions across basically every industry, every company where AI, there's low-hanging fruit, so to speak, for AI and machine learning. I think there's obviously the example that everyone kind of thinks about is recommendation engines. 2 is expanding beyond that. There's almost everything in that process that can be personalized. Personalizing down to the language and how we respond to customers can be is something we can do with AI. So literally everything can be personalized, from what you suggest to when you suggest it to how you suggest it to why you suggest it. That's a really cool element that I think recommendation engines to date have just largely scratched the surface of personalizing the experience. Well, I think, so I think the question again is, sales and marketing are low-hanging fruits and adoption is so slow and it's unsteady. And why is that? I think it again goes back to these technological limitations. Unless you can fully automate literally every step of your business, which is largely no company has even ever attempted.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. I know this was on short notice, but your presentation was absolutely phenomenal. I learned so much. I think everyone learned so much.
Of course, thanks for having me. If anybody wants to, connect on LinkedIn or take the slides or whatever it is, happy to do so. But thanks again.